Bai Lu tearful interview. Did Dylan Wang betray her for Sheu Yue? In a dimly lit studio stage, camera lights flickering, Bai Lu sits alone on a plush chair, her eyes glistening faintly under the soft glow. Sheu Yue whispers in the background a song she once sang with Dylan Wang, memories flooding her mind. Each moment seems suspended in time. As she lifts a hand to brush away a tear, she speaks in hushed tones of a love once bright, now shifting like mist. The scene opens with Bai Lu entering the studio. Through heavy curtains, the air hums with expectation. There are reporters, lights, fans, all waiting. But she moves as though the world around her has slowed. Each step echoes in the corridor. She pauses for breath. Her heart seems to hammer inside her chest. But she holds herself upright. She finds the chair, then bows her head. The silence is absolute. Her voice breaks, first softly, then stronger, as she begins to tell a story of trust, devotion, promises made on moonlit nights, dreams built together in hidden moments behind closed doors, and then a tremor, a crack in the foundation. She speaks of Dylan Wang, a name once woven into her world. He was the sun rising over her horizon for years, a presence she leaned into, a partner she trusted implicitly. But there are whispers now, murmurs of betrayal. Sheu Yue enters into the tapestry of their lives as someone whose presence seems to grow in the shadows. Scenes emerge in Bai Lu's recollection. She pictures late nights when Dylan called Sheu Yue for laughter, songs, perhaps solace, scenes when Sheu Yue appeared in his stories, slowly slipping into his thoughts, into his plans, into conversations that once belonged only to Bai Lu. One night, Bai Lu remembers standing in a hallway outside a door. She heard laughter, her breath caught, her heart shivered. She opened the door, the light spilling over a room. She saw Dylan Wang and Sheu Yue seated close, their expressions soft, tender. The look Sheu Yue gave was unfamiliar. The look Dylan Wang held was distant from the one he reserved for Bai Lu earlier in their days. She stood frozen, the door heavy with betrayal. She retreated silently, letting shadows swallow her figure. She backed into darkness, her world tilting. Then she fled into the night under a sky pale with regret. The moon alone witnessed her tears dropping like pearls on asphalt. She walked until the soles of her shoes wore thin, until the ache in her chest threatened to silence her voice. In the interview, she speaks of that night. She hums a melody they once wrote together. Now the melody is sharp with pain. She speaks of how Dylan explained things later. Incense smoke in a room, laughter gone cold, his words soft but unable to mend fractures. His eyes closed when reminded of her face. Sheu Yue, her name on his lips, a promise trembling without strength. The studio seems to tilt as she recounts another memory, a holiday by the sea, the salt spray in the air, the sun warming skin, waves breaking on sand. She thought Dylan looked at her with love. She believed their hands fit together like twin vines entwined. But then Sheu Yue emerged from tide water, or perhaps from behind a palm tree, laughter in her voice stepping into the frame. Dylan turned his gaze to her. Sheu Yue, her silhouette shining, wet hair glistening. Bai Lu watched, first in joy, then in panic, then in silence. She had expected jealousy, she had expected confrontation, but all she felt was emptiness. She turned away, looked at waves whipping the shore, white foam sparking her despair. In that instant, betrayal was not an act, it was a sharp scent in the wind. It was the cold drip of a promise dissolving in salt water. She never yelled, she never screamed. She simply felt the ocean gather around her heart until she could no longer breathe in love, but only longing. In the interview, lights dim for a moment. She holds a picture in her hand, a photograph of Dylan Wang and herself smiling under fireworks. Sheu Yue is nowhere in that image, but her absence feels more present than any person. She stares at the photo, tears rolling down her cheeks. She clutches it to her chest, as though it might shield her from the storm. She cannot flee. Then the interviewer voice, gentle, soft, comes seeking answers. Bai Lu tries to speak of what betrayal means. She speaks of trust fracturing, of secrets told and laughter becoming shadows. She says betrayal is not one sharp act, it is many small cuts, each one invisible, until together they shape a wound that cannot be ignored. Did Dylan Wang betray her for Sheu Yue? She pauses, the pause heavy with weight. She inhales slowly. She exhales. She says she does not know. She says love is not simple. She says sometimes hearts drift away. Without ceremony, he does not always choose with malice, but the effect still wounds. She recalls when Dylan began slipping his hand away in photographs, when in group events he lingered with Sheu Yue longer than before, when his eyes sought her reflection in others, when his lips spoke of things once only whispered in their closeness. But always apologies followed, soft apologies, tender promises to heal, to return to the way they were. But Bai Lu felt those apologies less like bridges, more like echoes fading sunrise. She describes nights lying awake beneath the same roof staring at ceiling patterns at shadows dancing. She tried to imagine if Sheu Yue was only friend presence, but other times her mind painted scenes of betrayal vivid like storms in sea tangled. The scene transitions. She shows us a letter she found slipped under a pillow, a message in unfamiliar handwriting, words that spoke of longing, care, admiration, addressed to Dylan Wang. She never opened it fully, but the glimpse was enough. The camera closes in on her eyes, now brimming with tears. She whispers that perhaps she seemed weak for crying, but she says that pain can be brave. She says that to feel betrayal is human. She says that to hope and love after betrayal even braver. Fans around the world wait, watching. Social media comments flood threads. Some say she deserves truth. Some say perhaps nothing more than rumor. Others hope for reconciliation. Some declare Sheu Yue innocent. Some believe she is consort in a triangle of feelings entwined. Some say Dylan must answer for if betrayal is pain or just accident of heart. But Bai Lu in interview holds her head high. She refuses to let the tearful interview define her only as wounded. She says that stars may fall and hearts may bend, but one can still stand, one can still desire kindness, even she wants the story turned from dark into dawn. In closing, she stands slowly from the chair, curtains behind her shift, as breeze unseen seems to move fabric. Her face set in resolve, her eyes no longer only sorrow but glimmer with something new, strength building in quiet. She says if Dylan between them, she will survive, she will learn, she will rise, she will no longer be shadow of what she was once falling into, but light that returns. Bai Lu Tearful Interview Part 2. A mirror of silence and the whispering storm. The studio grew quiet again. The lights above flickered as though reacting to the tension in the room. The moment hung still like a glass orb ready to shatter. Bai Lu sat unmoving for a heartbeat longer than expected, her fingers still curled around the edge of the photograph she held earlier. It was worn now, the edges soft from nights of overhandling. A memory preserved in paper, now heavy with questions that had no easy answers. She leaned forward slightly, elbows on knees, gaze lowered. Her voice returned, low and aching, as she began to speak again. She spoke not of Sheu Yue this time, not yet, but of Dylan. Of the little signs she once chose to ignore. Of the way his voice started to drift when he said her name, as if her name was a song he could no longer remember how to sing. There was a party once, a private gathering on a rooftop above the city skyline. Lanterns danced in the wind, music played softly in the background, and laughter rolled across the tiles like falling stars. Dylan had arrived late. She remembered the wind had picked up then, and a sense of unease followed him in. His smile was half there, his embrace brief, and his eyes carried the weight of another conversation unfinished elsewhere. She had asked him where he had been. He replied simply, vaguely. A meeting. An errand. His hand lingered in his pocket. His eyes darted toward the elevator more than once that night. She thought it was nerves. Or maybe fatigue. But then Sheu Yue walked in. Not announced. Not dressed for a party. Just casual, confident, and radiant in her natural way. The room shifted. Conversations paused. Even the music seemed to lower itself in her presence. Bai Lu stood in a corner then, champagne glass in hand, watching Dylan from across the room. Watching how his smile grew when he saw Sheu Yue. Watching how his shoulders eased, how his eyes finally settled. Sheu Yue laughed, her head thrown back in careless delight, and Dylan leaned in just a bit too close, just a moment too long. She remembered the taste of the champagne turning bitter, the sound of glass shattering somewhere distant, or maybe just in her mind. She told the interviewer that night stayed with her for weeks. Not because anything happened between them that could be proven, not because there were words exchanged or touches that crossed lines, but because in that moment, she saw the light that once reflected toward her now illuminating someone else. She went home that night and cried in silence. She ran the water in the shower just so no one would hear the sobs racking her body. She curled into bed and tried to forget the laughter echoing between Dylan and Sheu Yue. She tried to remember the first time Dylan kissed her, the softness of it, the warmth. But the memory was fuzzy now, like trying to tune into a signal too far to hear clearly. The interviewer leaned in, asking carefully, did she ever confront him? Did she ever ask the question straight? Bai Lu closed her eyes. She nodded. Yes. There was a confrontation. They were in a hotel room, high above a rainy city. The kind of rain that falls slow and steady, each droplet like a ticking clock. She had been filming late. Dylan had flown in to visit her. They ordered room service, watched a movie in silence, and then she turned to him. She asked him if there was something between him and Sheu Yue. He froze. He looked at her like a child caught with candy he should not have had. Not angry. Not guilty. Just unsure what to say. He said Sheu Yue was a friend. A colleague. Someone he respected. Bai Lu said nothing. She only watched his face. Then she asked him the real question. The one that cut to the center. Do you love her? The silence that followed was thunderous. Not because he said yes, but because he did not say no. He turned away. That was the answer. She sat alone after he fell asleep, the hotel window fogged with condensation, her reflection looking ghost-like in the glass. The city lights below blurred and indistinct, like her own understanding of the relationship she thought they had built. In the studio now, her tears were not loud. They were quiet, like the tide rising slowly to swallow a shore that had not noticed the moon pulling at its depths. She told the interviewer she stayed with him after that night. For a while. Hoping he would come back. Hoping she was wrong. But love is not a thing to chase. It either chooses you or it does not. Dylan began to fade. Little by little. Calls unanswered. Meetings missed. Apologies delayed. Until one day, there was a photograph. It circulated online before she had even seen it. Dylan and Sheu Yue. Arm in arm. Not intimate. But not strangers. Their smiles wide. Their bodies relaxed. It was a candid moment, but it spoke volumes. The public buzzed. The rumors erupted like wildfire. But Bai Lu remained silent. Until now. In the interview, she speaks slowly, words deliberate, each one like a stone laid down in a path back to herself. She says she does not hate Sheu Yue. She does not hate Dylan. She hates only the silence between what was and what is. She says betrayal is not only what is done. Sometimes it is what is not said. The touch not returned. The promise not kept. The goodbye never given. The interviewer asks her one final question. If Dylan Wang stood before you now, what would you say? Bai Lu pauses. Her hands rest still. Her breath catches just slightly. She says, I would say thank you. Thank you for loving me once. Thank you for showing me what I deserve. Thank you for letting go when you could not hold on anymore. And then I would walk away. The screen fades to black as the soft sound of a piano plays in the background. The interview ends. But her story does not.